Jake Martinez stepped out of the transport ship and looked up at the huge building in front of him. The Galactic Interspecies Academy was bigger than anything he had ever seen. Its tall towers reached up into the purple sky of Station Omega, and lights blinked along its walls like stars. He grabbed his bag and walked toward the main entrance. Other students moved around him, but none of them looked human. Jake saw tall beings made of what looked like living crystal, walking beside small creatures with tentacles instead of arms. A group of lizard-like students talked in clicking sounds. While their scales changed colors, Jake was one of only 12 humans accepted into the academy this year. Earth had joined the galactic community 50 years ago, but humans were still new to most alien species. The academy took students from 47 different worlds, and they were supposed to be the smartest beings from each planet. The entrance hall was enormous. The ceiling was so high that Jake could barely see it. Students filled the space, talking in dozens of different languages. Some walked on two legs like Jake. Others slithered or floated or moved in ways he had never imagined. A small robot with a blue light on its head rolled up to Jake. "Welcome to the academy," it said in perfect English. "I am Guide Unit 7. I will show you to your room." Jake followed the robot through long hallways filled with more strange students. He saw beings that looked like walking trees, others that seemed to be made of pure energy, and some that were just floating balls of light. They all stared at him as he passed, and Jake tried to smile and wave when they looked friendly. The robot stopped at a door marked with symbols Jake could not read. "This is your room," it said. "You will share it with 3 other students. They are already inside." Jake took a deep breath and opened the door. The room was large with 4 beds, each designed for different types of beings. One bed looked normal. To Jake, another was filled with what appeared to be sand. The third was a shallow pool of water, and the fourth seemed to be made of rough stones. 3 alien students looked up when Jake entered. The first was tall and made of clear crystal that sparkled in the light. The second was small and round with 8 tentacles that moved constantly. The third looked like a lizard that had learned to walk on 2 legs, with green scales and large, yellow eyes. "Hello," Jake said, feeling nervous. "I am Jake Martinez from Earth." The crystal being's voice sounded like wind chimes when it spoke. "I am Zeph from the world Quartzion. This is my first time meeting a human." The tentacled creature spoke next, its voice bubbly like it was talking underwater. "I am Blip from Aquanus. I have heard stories about your species." The lizard being hissed softly before speaking. "I am Vex from Scalaris. We have been waiting for you." Jake put his bag on the normal-looking bed and sat down. "Thank you for letting me share your room. I hope we can be friends." Zeph's crystal body brightened. "We hope so too. We have never shared space with a human before." Over the next few days, Jake learned about life at the academy. The classes were hard but interesting. He studied subjects he had never heard of, like quantum biology and multidimensional physics. His favorite class was Comparative Planetary Sciences, where he learned about different worlds and how life developed on each one. Jake also learned about his roommates. Zeph came from a world made mostly of crystal and metal. His people ate minerals and grew larger as they got older. Blip's world was covered entirely by ocean, and his people had never seen dry land until they reached space. Vex came from a hot, desert planet where his people lived underground during the day and only came out at night. The other students at the academy were curious about Jake, but also seemed nervous around him. During meals in the great dining hall, alien students would watch him eat and whisper to each other. Jake noticed that conversations often stopped when he walked by. "Why do they all stare at me?" Jake asked his roommates one evening. Blip's tentacles curled and uncurled slowly. "Humans are new to the galaxy. Many species have heard stories but never met one of your kind." "What kind of stories?" Jake asked. Vex's scales darkened slightly. "Stories about your world, about the dangerous creatures that live there," Jake laughed. "Earth has some dangerous animals, but so does every world, right?" His 3 roommates looked at each other in a way that made Jake think he was missing something important. "Not like your world," Zeph said quietly. "Most worlds have 1 or 2 dangerous creatures. Your world is different." Jake did not understand what they meant, but he decided not to worry about it. He was here to learn, and he was making friends. The strange looks from other students would probably stop once they got to know him better. 3 weeks into the semester, Professor Kalani announced a special project for the Dangerous Fauna class. Each student would present information about the most dangerous creature from their home world. Jake smiled when he heard this. He already knew exactly which animal he would choose to talk about. He had no idea that his presentation would change everything. The day of the presentations arrived, and Jake felt excited. He had spent hours preparing his talk about the cassowary. He thought his classmates would find it interesting to learn about one of Earth's more unusual birds. Professor Kilani stood at the front of the classroom. She was a Centaurian, which meant she looked like a walking tree with glowing bark. Her branches moved slowly as she spoke, and her voice sounded like wind through leaves. "Today we will learn about dangerous creatures from your home worlds," she said. "Remember, the purpose is to understand how different environments create different threats. Who would like to go first?" Several students raised their hands or tentacles or whatever they used to show they wanted to speak. Professor Kalani pointed to a student named Kira, who looked like a butterfly with rainbow wings. Kira floated to the front of the room and activated the holographic display. An image appeared of a small snake with shimmering scales. "This is the shimmer snake from my world," Kira said. "It is only 18 inches long, but its bite can kill any creature on our planet in minutes." The class listened carefully as Kira explained how her people had built their cities high in the air to avoid these snakes. The snakes could not climb very well, so living in tall towers kept everyone safe. Next, a student named Nix came forward. He looked like a giant ant walking on 2 legs. His presentation showed a beetle the size of a human hand. "This is the gore beetle," Nix said. "It can spit acid that melts through metal. When even one of these beetles is found, we must evacuate the entire area until the military can deal with it." Jake listened to more presentations. Every student talked about creatures that sounded scary, but they were all either very small or very rare. Most of the dangerous animals lived in only one part of their planet, and the alien civilizations had built their cities far away from these creatures. Finally, Professor Kalani called Jake's name. He walked to the front of the room with confidence, carrying his datapad with all the information about cassowaries. "Today I will tell you about the cassowary," Jake said as he activated the holographic display. A large, black bird appeared in the air above the classroom. It stood 6 feet tall with powerful legs and a hard, bony crest on top of its head. Jake noticed that the room became very quiet, but he thought his classmates were just paying attention. He did not see that Zeph's crystal body was getting dimmer, or that Blip's tentacles were curling up tight. "The cassowary lives in the rainforests of Australia and New Guinea on Earth," Jake continued. "It is one of the most dangerous birds in the world. Adult cassowaries can weigh up to 130 pounds and stand 6 feet tall." He clicked to the next image, which showed the cassowary's powerful legs and sharp claws. Their legs are incredibly strong. They can run 30 miles per hour through thick jungle and jump 5 feet high. Each foot has 3 toes with sharp claws. The middle claw can be 5 inches long and is like a dagger. Around the classroom, alien students were starting to look worried. Vex's scales had changed from green to pale yellow. Some students in the back rows were leaning away from the holographic display as if the bird might jump out and attack them. Jake did not notice any of this. He was focused on giving a good presentation. "Cassowaries are very territorial and aggressive," he said. "They attack when they feel threatened or when someone gets too close to their babies. There have been over 200 recorded attacks on humans." A gasp went around the room. Professor Kalani's glowing bark started to fade to a dull, brown color. 200 attacks? Squeaked a small furry student from the 3rd row. "Yes," Jake said, thinking this was a normal question. "Several people have been killed by cassowaries. Most attacks happen when people accidentally walk into their territory or get between a parent and its young. Cassowaries will chase humans for long distances if they feel threatened." Jake clicked to a video that showed a cassowary running through the forest. Its powerful legs moved like pistons, carrying it at incredible speed between the trees. The bird's hard crest pushed through branches that would stop most other animals. They are also good swimmers and can cross rivers, Jake added. They have attacked boats, cars, and even buildings when they think something is threatening them. During mating season, they become even more aggressive. By now, every student in the classroom looked terrified. Some were gripping their desks with whatever they used for hands. Others had moved their chairs back from the holographic display. Even Professor Kalani seemed to be trying to make herself smaller. Jake showed more pictures of cassowaries. There were images of their sharp claws, their powerful build, and the damage they could cause. He explained how they use their hard crest like a helmet when charging through thick jungle growth. Humans who live in cassowary territory learn to be very careful, Jake said. You never approach one directly, you always watch for warning signs and you back away slowly if you see one. If a cassowary charges at you, you should try to get behind a tree or car or building. What if there is no tree? Asked a student whose voice shook with fear. Jake shrugged. Then you are in serious trouble. Cassowaries can kick hard enough to break bones or worse. Their claws can cut through skin and muscle easily. The silence in the room was complete now. Jake could hear the air circulation system humming in the walls. He looked around at his classmates and finally realized that something was wrong. Everyone looked like they had seen a monster. Any other questions? Jake asked. No one raised a hand or tentacle or claw. They all just stared at him. Professor Kalani cleared her throat, which sounded like branches creaking. Thank you, Jake, she said in a very quiet voice. That was very informative. Perhaps we should take a break. As students filed out of the classroom, Jake heard them whispering to each other in urgent voices. He caught words like terrifying and impossible and how do they survive? Jake packed up his datapad, confused. He thought he had given a good presentation about an interesting animal. He had no idea that he had just described what his classmates considered a nightmare creature that should not exist on any civilized world. The looks his classmates gave him as they left the room were very different from the curious stares he had gotten used to. Now they looked at him like he was something dangerous himself. After the cassowary presentation, everything changed for Jake. Students who used to nod at him in the hallways now crossed to the other side when they saw him coming. Groups that had been friendly before became quiet when he approached their tables in the dining hall. Jake tried to understand what had happened. He asked his roommates if his presentation had been bad, but they always changed the subject. Zeph would suddenly become very interested in his homework. Blip would dive into his waterbed and stay there. Vex would claim he needed to go study in the library. The whispers followed Jake everywhere. When he walked into the quantum biology lab, the other students stopped talking. When he sat down in multi-dimensional physics, the alien students nearby would quietly move their chairs away from him. Even the professors seemed nervous around him now. 3 days after his presentation, Jake was eating lunch alone when he overheard a conversation at the next table. A group of students were talking in what they thought were quiet voices. I heard the creature he described could kill any of us in seconds, said a student that looked like a walking flower. 200 attacks on his own species, added another student with blue skin and 4 arms. And they just live with these monsters? What kind of world produces creatures like that? Asked a third student whose body seemed to be made of shifting sand. Jake realized they were talking about the cassowary and his presentation. He turned around to explain that cassowaries were not really monsters, just dangerous birds that could be avoided with common sense. But when the alien students saw him looking at them, they grabbed their food and quickly moved to another table. Jake was left sitting alone, more confused than ever. That evening, Jake confronted his roommates. He had had enough of the strange behavior and wanted answers. We need to talk, Jake said as soon as he entered their room. Something is wrong and I want to know what it is. Zeph's crystal body dimmed, which Jake had learned meant he was nervous. Blip's tentacles curled up tight. Vex's scales turned a pale yellow color. Nothing is wrong, Zeph said, but his voice sounded like cracking glass. Do not lie to me, Jake said. Ever since my presentation, everyone treats me like I have some disease. Students run away when they see me. What did I do wrong? Blip's tentacles uncurled slowly. You did nothing wrong, Jake. That is the problem. What does that mean? Jake asked. Vex looked at the other two roommates and they seemed to have a silent conversation. Finally, Vex spoke. Jake, sit down. We need to explain something to you. Jake sat on his bed and waited. The creature you described, Zeph said, carefully, the cassowary. Do you understand what you told us about it? I told you about a large bird that can be dangerous if you bother it, Jake said. What is the big deal? The big deal, Blip said, his voice bubbling with emotion, is that the creature you described would be considered a Class A threat by galactic standards. A what? A Class A threat, Vex explained. That means a creature so dangerous that if it were found on any civilized world, the entire planet would need to be evacuated. Jake stared at his roommates. That is crazy. It is just a bird. Just a bird? Zeph's voice rose to a high chime. Jake, you described a creature that is 6 feet tall, can run 30 miles per hour, can jump 5 feet high, has dagger-like claws, and has killed members of your own species. How is that just a bird? Because that is what it is, Jake said. Yes, cassowaries are dangerous, but humans deal with dangerous animals all the time. You just have to be smart about it. All the time? Blip squeaked. Jake, how many dangerous creatures live on your world? Jake thought about it. I do not know. Hundreds, I guess. Maybe thousands, depending on how you define dangerous. The three aliens looked at each other with expressions that Jake was starting to recognize as horror. Hundreds? Vex whispered. Jake, most worlds have one dangerous creature. Maybe two. The gore beetles on my world are considered the worst threat on any planet in our sector, and they are only the size of your hand. But you heard Kira talk about the shimmer snakes, Jake protested. Those sound pretty dangerous. The shimmer snakes are 18 inches long and only live in one small area of one continent, Zeph explained. Kira's people built all their cities on the other continents to avoid them. The snakes have shaped their entire civilization. The gore beetles on my world are similar, Vex added. They only exist in a few deep caves. We have spent thousands of years making sure they stay there. Jake was beginning to understand why his classmates seemed scared of him. So, when I described the cassowary, you described a creature that would cause panic on any world in the galaxy, Blip finished. And you talked about it like it was normal. Because it is normal, Jake said. For Earth, anyway. That is what scares everyone, Zeph said quietly. Jake, what you described as normal would be a nightmare for the rest of us. Jake sat in silence for a moment, trying to process what his roommates had told him. On their worlds, one dangerous creature was enough to shape an entire civilization. On Earth, dangerous creatures were just part of life. Is that why everyone is afraid of me now? Jake asked. Because I come from a world with dangerous animals? Not exactly, Vex said. They are afraid because you talked about living with these creatures like it was nothing. If your world has hundreds of creatures like the cassowary, and humans just deal with them, then what does that say about humans? Jake was starting to see the problem. They think humans are dangerous because we live with dangerous things. Not just dangerous, Blip said. They think humans must be the most dangerous creatures on your world, because you are the ones who survived. The room was quiet except for the humming of the air recyclers. Jake finally understood why his presentation had changed everything. He had not just described a dangerous bird. He had accidentally revealed that humans came from a world so dangerous that it would terrify every other species in the galaxy. And if humans could survive in that kind of environment, what did that make humans themselves? So what do I do now? Jake asked. How do I make everyone understand that humans are not monsters? His three roommates looked at each other again. We do not know, Zeph said finally, but we will help you figure it out. For the first time since his presentation, Jake felt like he was not alone. His roommates might be scared of where he came from, but they were still his friends. That was a start. Word about Jake's cassowary presentation spread quickly through the academy. Within a week, students from other classes were asking to meet the human who had casually described a creature that would cause planetary evacuations on their worlds. Jake found himself in the strange position of being both feared and fascinating. Students would gather in small groups to ask him questions about Earth, but they always kept a safe distance while they talked to him. One evening, a larger group than usual gathered in the common area of Jake's dormitory. Students had come from different floors and different species groups. Jake recognized some faces, but many were completely new to him. Kira, the butterfly-like student who had presented about shimmer snakes, spoke first. "Jake, we have been talking about your presentation. We want to understand something." "What do you want to know?" Jake asked, sitting down in the center of the group. "You said cassowaries were just one of many dangerous creatures on your world," said Nix, the ant-like student. "Can you tell us about the others?" Jake looked around at the circle of alien faces watching him. "Are you sure you want to know? My roommates told me that the cassowary information scared everyone." "We are scared," admitted a small, fuzzy student named Pip. "But we are also curious. If we are going to live in a galaxy with humans, we need to understand what your world is. Like..." Jake thought carefully about how to explain Earth's wildlife without causing panic. "Okay, but remember that humans have learned to live safely with these animals. We are not in constant danger." He pulled out his datapad and brought up Earth's wildlife database. "Let me start with something smaller. This is a box jellyfish." The holographic display showed a translucent, bell-shaped creature with long tentacles trailing beneath it. It looked almost pretty floating in the blue water. "It lives in the oceans around Australia," Jake said. "It is only about the size of a basketball, but its sting can kill a human in minutes. The tentacles can be 10 feet long and are almost invisible in the water." Several students moved back from the holographic display, even though they knew it was just light. "How do humans swim in your oceans?" asked a blue-skinned student with gills on her neck. "We learn which areas are safe and which are not," Jake explained. "We wear protective clothing when we swim in areas where box jellyfish might be found. We also have medical treatments for stings if we get help quickly enough." "You have medical treatments for something that deadly?" Seth asked. His crystal body was flickering with nervous energy. "We have to," Jake said. "Earth has many venomous creatures, snakes, spiders, fish, even some mammals. Humans developed anti-venom and other treatments because we needed them to survive." Jake brought up another image. This one showed a massive crocodile lying on a riverbank. "This is a saltwater crocodile. They can grow to 23 feet long and weigh over 2,000 pounds. They have the strongest bite force of any animal on Earth." The students stared at the enormous reptile in shocked silence. "They live in rivers and coastal areas in northern Australia and Southeast Asia," Jake continued. "They are excellent swimmers and can hold their breath underwater for an hour. They are also very good at hiding. You might not see one until it attacks." "How many humans do these creatures kill?" asked Vex, his scales now almost white with fear. "A few every year," Jake said. "But millions of humans live in the same areas as saltwater crocodiles. We just learn to be careful around water, where they might be hiding." Jake showed them more creatures. Great white sharks that could grow to 20 feet long and bite through metal. Polar bears that weighed 1,500 pounds and could outrun a human across ice and snow. African elephants that could charge at 25 miles per hour and weigh 7 tons. With each new creature, his audience became more amazed and terrified. They could not understand how humans survived on a world with so many deadly animals. "But the worst part," Jake said, not realizing how his words sounded to his listeners, "is that these are not even close to being the most dangerous things on Earth." The room fell completely silent. Even the air recycling system seemed to stop, humming. "What do you mean?" Professor Kalani asked. Jake had not noticed her arrive, but she was standing at the back of the group with several other professors. "Well," Jake said, bringing up new images, "there are the really big predators. Grizzly bears, African lions, Bengal tigers, and then there are the small but deadly ones. Blue-ringed octopus, death adder snakes, poison dart frogs." He scrolled through more images. "Hippos kill more humans than almost any other large animal. They weigh 4 tons and can run 19 miles per hour. Cape buffalo travel in herds and will chase threats for miles. Komodo dragons have bacteria in their saliva that causes deadly infections. Professor Kalani's bark had turned completely white. Other professors were whispering to each other in concerned voices. "Jake," said Dr. Zenth, the Academy's dean, stepping forward. He was a tall, thin being with silver skin and large black eyes. "Are you saying that all of these creatures exist on Earth at the same time?" "Yes," Jake said. "They live in different environments, of course. Polar bears live in the Arctic, lions live in Africa, tigers live in Asia. But yes, they all exist on the same planet." "And humans live alongside all of them," Dr. Zenth pressed. "We share the planet with them," Jake corrected. "We have learned to live in a way that usually avoids conflict. We study them, we understand their behavior, and we give them space when possible." "Usually avoids conflict," repeated a professor that looked like a walking stick insect. "What happens when conflict cannot be avoided?" Jake hesitated. He could see that his audience was already overwhelmed, but the question deserved an honest answer. "Then humans fight back," he said simply. "We are not the biggest or strongest creatures on Earth, but we are the smartest. We learn to make tools and weapons. We learn to work together in groups. We learn to plan and communicate and adapt." "So humans are predators," Dr. Zenth said quietly. "We can be," Jake admitted, "but we prefer not to be. Most humans would rather solve problems without fighting. But if we have to fight to protect ourselves or our families, we are very good at it." The silence stretched on for a long time. Jake could see that his audience was processing what he had told them. They were trying to understand how a species could evolve on such a dangerous world and still develop intelligence and civilization. Finally, Pip, the small, fuzzy student, spoke up. "Jake, are humans dangerous to us?" Jake thought about this question carefully. It was the one they all wanted to ask but were afraid to hear the answer to. "Humans could be dangerous to other species," he said honestly. "We have the skills and tools to be dangerous when we need to be. But we do not want to be. Humans succeeded on Earth by learning to cooperate, not just compete. We take care of our families and friends. We help those who need help. We prefer to make friends rather than enemies." "But if we threatened you?" asked another student. "Then we would defend ourselves," Jake said. "But we would try to find a peaceful solution first. Fighting is always the last choice for most humans." Dr. Zenth nodded slowly. "I think I am beginning to understand. Humans are dangerous because you had to be to survive. But you are also social and cooperative because you had to be to survive." "Exactly," Jake said. "The same evolution that made us able to deal with dangerous creatures also made us value working together and taking care of each other." The group began to break up slowly, with students talking quietly among themselves as they left. Jake could hear words like incredible and impossible and amazing, mixed in with the usual terrifying and dangerous. But for the first time since his Cassowary presentation, Jake thought some of his classmates were beginning to see humans as something other than monsters. They were starting to understand that what made humans potentially dangerous also made them valuable as friends and allies. It was a start. The weeks following Jake's expanded explanation about Earth's wildlife brought gradual changes to life at the Academy. Students no longer ran away when they saw him, though many still kept a respectful distance. Instead of fear, Jake now saw curiosity in their eyes. Professor Kalani approached Jake after their dangerous fauna class one morning. Her bark had returned to its normal glowing color, though it still dimmed slightly when she looked at him. "Jake, I have been thinking about your presentations," she said. "I would like to invite you to give guest lectures in some of my other classes. I think students from across the Academy could learn from understanding Earth's unique evolutionary environment." Jake was surprised but pleased. "I would be happy to help, Professor. What do you want me to talk about?" "How humans developed civilization despite living with so many threats," she said. "Most species develop technology to avoid their world's dangers. Humans seem to have developed technology to coexist with danger. That is very different." The first guest lecture was scheduled for the following week. Jake spent time preparing, trying to think of ways to explain human evolution that would not terrify his audience. he decided to focus on how dangerous environments had shaped positive human traits. The lecture hall was packed when Jake arrived. Students from every year and every species had come to hear him speak. Even professors and academy staff filled the back rows. Jake had never spoken to such a large group before, and he felt nervous. "Thank you for coming," Jake began. "I want to talk about how humans developed on Earth, and why our evolution was different from most other species." He activated the holographic display to show a map of Earth. Earth is unusual because it has many different environments, and each environment has its own dangerous creatures. Humans evolved in Africa, where we shared the land with lions, leopards, hyenas, venomous snakes, and many other predators. The display showed early humans living in small groups, using primitive tools, and working together to survive. Because we were not the strongest or fastest creatures, early humans had to become very smart very quickly, Jake explained. We learned to make tools not just for hunting, but for protection. We learned to work together because a group of humans could survive where a single human could not. A student with tentacles raised one appendage. But why did humans not just leave the dangerous areas like other species do? That is a good question, Jake said. The problem was that on Earth, there were no safe areas. Every environment had its own dangers. The forests had leopards and venomous snakes. The grasslands had lions and hyenas. The coasts had crocodiles and sharks. Humans had to learn to live with danger because we could not escape it. Jake showed images of early human communities. This forced us to develop very strong social bonds. We had to trust each other completely because our survival depended on it. A human who abandoned the group would die. A group that did not work together would die. So humans became social because you had to be, observed Dr. Zenth from the audience. Exactly, Jake said. But we also had to become very good at making quick decisions under pressure. When a lion charges at you, you have seconds to decide whether to fight, run, or climb a tree. This gave humans very fast reflexes and good problem-solving skills. Jake brought up new images showing how human technology developed. As we got smarter, we made better tools and weapons, but we also learned to study the dangerous animals around us. We learned their behavior patterns, their weaknesses, and how to avoid them when possible. This is why humans seem so calm about danger, said Zeph from the front row. You evolved to make quick decisions when threatened. Yes, Jake agreed. But more importantly, we evolved to prefer cooperation over conflict. Fighting with dangerous animals was always risky, even for groups of humans with weapons. It was better to avoid fights when possible and only fight when we had to. A professor that looked like a giant mantis raised a claw. But humans also learned to hunt these dangerous creatures. Does that not make humans predators? Jake nodded. Humans are predators, but we are also many other things. We learned to hunt because we needed food and because some animals were too dangerous to leave alive near our communities. But we also learned to take care of sick and injured group members. We learned to share resources and knowledge. We learned to solve problems together. So the same evolution that made you dangerous also made you caring, said Professor Kilani. That is right, Jake said. Humans who did not care about their group members did not survive to have children. Humans who could not work with others did not survive. The humans who survived were the ones who were both tough enough to deal with threats and social enough to build strong communities. Jake spent the rest of the lecture explaining how these early survival traits had shaped modern human civilization. He talked about how humans had learned to value diversity, because different skills were needed to survive in different situations. He explained how human art and music had developed from the need to communicate complex ideas quickly and build group unity. Humans also learned to be very curious about everything around us, Jake said. On Earth, knowledge could mean the difference between life and death. Knowing which plants were safe to eat, which animals were dangerous, and how to predict weather patterns was essential for survival. When the lecture ended, the applause was enthusiastic. Students gathered around Jake afterward, asking more questions and sharing stories about their own worlds. For the first time since arriving at the academy, Jake felt like he was truly part of the community. Over the following months, Jake gave lectures to different classes and departments. He talked about human psychology, human technology development, and human social structures. Each presentation helped his classmates understand that humans were not monsters from a death world, but intelligent beings shaped by their environment, like every other species. The change in how other students treated Jake was dramatic. Instead of avoiding him, students would often approach him for help with problems. They discovered that humans were very good at finding creative solutions to difficult situations. Jake's ability to stay calm under pressure and think quickly made him a valuable study partner and friend. His roommates noticed the change too. "You know," Blip said one evening as they worked on homework together, "when you first told us about the cassowary, I thought humans must be the scariest creatures in the galaxy." "What do you think now?" Jake asked. "I think humans might be the bravest," Vex said. "Not because you are not afraid of danger, but because you face danger and still choose to be kind." Zeph's crystal body brightened with what Jake had learned was happiness. "I think humans prove that intelligence and compassion can develop anywhere, even in the most difficult conditions." As graduation day approached, Jake reflected on how much he had learned about his own species by seeing them through alien eyes. The cassowary presentation that had initially shocked his classmates had led to a deeper understanding of what made humans unique in the galaxy. On graduation day, Jake was not surprised when he was chosen to give a speech representing the graduating class. He stood at the podium looking out at hundreds of alien faces from dozens of different worlds. "When I first came to this academy," Jake said, "I thought I was here to learn about other species and other worlds. I did learn those things, but I also learned something unexpected. I learned about my own species by seeing us through your eyes." He paused and smiled at his classmates. "You taught me that what makes humans special is not that we come from a dangerous world. What makes us special is that we came from a dangerous world and still learned to value cooperation, kindness, and curiosity over violence and fear." "Every species in this room faced challenges while evolving," Jake continued. "Every species learned to survive in their own environment and develop their own strengths. Humans learned to be adaptable and resilient, but we also learned that we are stronger together than apart. As we leave this academy and go out into the galaxy, I hope we remember that our differences make us stronger. The traits that helped each of our species survive can help all of us build a better future together." The applause that followed was the loudest Jake had ever heard. As he looked out at his classmates, he saw not fear or curiosity, but acceptance and friendship. Professor Kalani approached him after the ceremony. "Jake, your presentation about the cassowary changed this academy," she said. "You helped us understand that being different does not mean being dangerous. You showed us that strength and kindness can exist together." "I just told the truth about my world," Jake said. "Sometimes," Professor Kalani replied, "that is exactly what people need to hear." As Jake prepared to leave the academy and begin his career in interspecies relations, he smiled thinking about that first presentation. He had set out to talk about an interesting bird and had ended up helping the galaxy understand humanity. Not bad for a simple presentation about a cassowary.